All right, so today we're going to learn about hopefully teaching your children well, right? Doing well financially. So try to break it down for different age brackets just so there's kind of something for everyone, since I don't know what ages, who is going to come, what ages your children are in. So just a couple of tips just for each age bracket, just that you can probably take home hopefully and help teach your children. So a little bit about myself. So you can obviously tell when I met my wife 25 years ago, I outkicked my coverage. So I changed my life motto. And it became, if my wife is happy, my life is happy. It worked out really well. So at the time that we got married, we were both first grade teachers. And I'll say I was making about $42,000 a year back then. And we decided to have kids. So there they are, Ava and Ella. So when we had Ava, Tracy decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I'm thinking $42,000 a year, happy wife, happy life. I'm like, all right, you can stay home, that's fine. And I'm thinking in my head, she's going to beg me to go back to work after 6 months. She's going to be so bored. She's a great teacher of the year numerous times. So I'm thinking, gosh, I've got it made. Well, 1 year turned into 8 years, and she wanted another kid. I mean, teachers like kids, who knew? But we did it. On my teacher salary, $42,000 a year, Tracy stayed home for 8 years, raised 2 daughters. We currently sit right now, we have no debt except our mortgage, on track for retirement, have a 1-year emergency fund in place, but most importantly, we live wealthy lives on a moderate income. And some of the stories and the lessons I'm going to show today are some of the things that I've taught my daughters. So now I'll say my oldest daughter, Ava, is a junior at UGA, and my youngest, Ella, is a senior. So next year I'll have 2 in college, so pray for me. But yeah, so I'll have to put my tips to the test as well. So before we get started, in Georgia right now, starting this school year, all high school kids, so during their last 2 years, so either junior or senior year, are required to take a financial literacy course. So to teach some of those basics, because a lot of times we know as adults what's like, gosh, I wish I'd have known, then what I know now. So children in 11th or 12th grade are required to take some sort of financial literacy course. And why is that? Well, let's just see how well you can do. So question 1, if you put $100 in the bank at 2% annual interest rate, what would you have after 5 years? Question 2, and I'll give you time to think, if your annual interest rate was 1%, but the annual inflation rate was 2%, would you be able to buy more or less 1 year later? And then 3, which is a safer investment, single stock or mutual funds? So let's see. Number 1, $110, right? So 2% of $100 is $2. So 2 times 5 years is $10, $110. So if your annual interest rate was 1%, inflation was 2, would you be able to buy more or less a year later? Obviously, it's less. And then 3, mutual funds, right? Individual stocks, very risky. Mutual funds, you're spread out, you're diversifying your investments. So for some of you, these may seem like pretty easy no-brainers, but did you know in 2021, fewer than 31% of Americans answered those 3 questions correctly? That's why there's a need for financial literacy. And that's why it starts with you all teaching your kids. Because if you don't do it, now at least schools are doing it, which is great, but who are they going to learn from? Their friends, reality TV, TikTok, right? So we have to be the ones that teach them so then they come out to the real world and they know what they're going to do with their money. So we're going to start way back, and like I said, some of these are the things that I've done with my daughters, just so you can take a couple if you want, but just kind of to help them with their money. So ages 3 to 5, very start, right? The exchange, you need money to buy things. This is very difficult nowadays because a lot of us, we either use our phones, we tap a card, so it's hard to see us give something to get something, right? It's kind of weird now, even when you tap a card, you're not really giving anything. But it's important for kids to see, so if you have children that age, maybe get money out of the bank when you go to the grocery store so they can see that you are giving something to get something in return. Because it's tangible, especially 3 to 5, they kind of have to see that to understand it. Hard to tap a card and they're like, what does that mean? And this helped us a lot right here, the chore chart. We started off with basic chores. So, and I want my kids, I expect them to do certain things at that age, clean your room, brush your teeth, things like that. But the goal of this, I wanted to also teach money management. So what we did, we would pay them $1 a week. We didn't do a large amount, and we had 3 jars. One was labeled giveaway, one is labeled savings, and one was labeled spending. So upon getting $1 a week, we would have them put 10 cents, 10% in the giveaway jar. They would put 25% or a quarter in the savings, and the rest was in spending. Now, not a lot, right? Remember, their ages 3 to 5. But then over time, that could build up the savings. Or we would go to the store. Hey, Dad, can I have this? Well, let's just see how much you have in your jars. If you don't have enough, maybe you should save up and buy it. Just simple lessons for them to learn at that age. And, most of the time, 3 to 5-year-olds, when you go, especially the dollar store, things don't cost that much. So you can let them exchange that money, and then they can see what it means. And they've also worked a little bit for it. Granted, they should clean their room, I get it, but at least they've done some effort to earn that money. And we're trying to teach, to teach them how to manage. And just think, as adults, if we held those same principles going forward in life, if we gave away 10%, saved 25% of our salary, and spent the rest, we would be fine. So pretty simple to teach at a young age. Primary years. So this is like kindergarten to second, third grade. Going above and beyond. So one thing I did with my daughter, both of them, I showed them, I told you we did chores. Well, I said, you know what, if you scrub the toilet, I'm going to give you an extra $1. You do it every week. Why? Well, it's disgusting. No one wants to do that, but I was trying to show them, if you do something that other people aren't willing to do, most of the time you're going to be rewarded for that. A lot of times it's with extra money. So a lot of people, once again, don't like doing that, but even in jobs, as we get older, we do more things. Unless you're a teacher, then you get the same pay and you get more responsibility, or that's a different subject. But usually, if you do more, you work harder, you get rewarded. So kind of an easy lesson. So maybe it's not scrubbing toilets, maybe it's helping you do yard work or whatever it may be. Be creative, but just show them going above and beyond pays off. And at this time, they had some money in their savings jar. A bank was offering, if they opened a savings account and put in I think at the time it was like $25, so they had money also from birthdays and Christmas, the bank was giving them $25 for free. And I said, this is very similar when you invest. So if you invest in stocks, most of us in the stock market, through our workplace, 401k, 403b, we earn compound interest over time. We do nothing to do that. So we invest the money, it grows. Average stock market growth is 10% a year. So trying to teach them at a young age, hey, instead of spending the money, if you do something invested, in this case at a bank, you're going to earn more. Someone's going to pay you because you've put money in it. So just kind of a short, easy way to show them, hey, you can earn free money. And as you get older, instead of buying stuff, if you invest it, you can have more money actually come to you. So that was the primary years. Secondary years, so this is like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, so upper elementary. This is a way you can teach about budgeting. So budgeting is very tough. Mainly for adults as well. Something like 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So we have a tough time as adults doing it. But to help kids, most young people, they like adults as well, spending time on electronics. So to help kind of teach a way for budgeting money, do it with their electronics. Say, you know what? You're going to have, and you come up with the number, I don't know, maybe it's like 10 hours a week you can have on electronics. Then they have to budget their time accordingly, just like we have to budget our money. And you can even kind of relay that too. When you do go to the grocery store, you go shopping, say, hey, we have whatever, $200 to spend on groceries this week, whatever it may be. And then they can kind of see, okay, when the money goes down, okay, we only have this much left. We only have this much left. But an easy way to correlate it is this time on electronics, because most kids, they love that, so they can kind of see how they have to balance the time with it. And then also a great game to teach, Monopoly. So a lot of times at this age, we played it a lot with our girls. And, when you're 9, 10, 11, you don't always think long term. So a lot of the time, the girls, they would just buy up properties, buy up stuff, and then they would have no money, and they would land on one of my properties, and I'd be like, well, you have no money, you got to give me a foot rub, right? I would just kind of make it fun with them. I'm like, but look, this is what happens in life. Thousands of years ago in the Bible, in Proverbs, the borrower is servant to the lender. That was before any stores were around, before anything that we had to spend money on was around, but yet Solomon knew that. So we have to use words of wisdom that go back 1,000 years. If we spend more than we earn, we're going to be in trouble, and then we're servant, right? We owe money to people, and then with credit cards, we're going to pay more interest. So it's just not a good thing is to get into debt. And an easy way to teach that is through playing Monopoly. So they can kind of see, okay, I don't have any leverage anymore, so I'm going to have to do what someone tells me to do. And the same holds true, unfortunately, as we get older. That's what happens to us. Early adolescence. So this is like 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So give them some freedom with some things that they want to buy. At this point, maybe they do have a job, maybe outside the house a little bit, earning a little extra money. A lot of times we want to control everything, be like, no, don't buy that, it's junk. But I would much rather them make a mistake on like a $25, $30 purchase than when they're 20, 25 years old and it's like a $1,000 purchase. So when they're this age, it's hard to just say, okay, you shouldn't buy that. But if they've earned their own money, let them blow it. And you know it's a mistake, but you're teaching them a lesson, because then, over time they're gonna be like, gosh, I wasted that money. I could have done this instead of this. But you gave them the freedom to do it with a smaller object compared to as when they get older, and it could be a much more expensive purchase. And this is probably one of the most important things. They listen to you, right? Kids follow their parents. Whether you realize it or not, they're listening, they're watching everything you do. So if you practice sound financial habits, they are more likely going to follow along. They may not all the time. I mean, my daughters, I can attest to that. My youngest one, she does spend more money than I would, and DoorDash now for the oldest one. But overall, they have good, sound financial principles because they've seen how Tracy and I, how we interact and how we talk and we discuss money issues. So practice what you preach. If they see that you are leading by example, they were more likely going to follow it at some point. Not all the time, right? Especially when they're 12 to 14, it may not happen. But as they get older, they will, because they see the success that you have, and then they respect you a little bit more because you actually do lead by example. The high school years, so 15 to 18, so 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So any job is a job, right? We don't want this to be a career. I was just talking to Miss Wright, and her son works at a kind of like a fast food place. Doesn't want to be there forever. That is not the goal. But when you're out there in the real world, you experience all sorts of different people. When my daughter was in 12th grade, my oldest, she worked at Starbucks as a barista. She saw all sorts of things going on. She saw people there that were a lot older than she was, that didn't work as hard as she did, and they were still at Starbucks. And I'm like, see, so they can see real world. It's not just me preaching to them. They kind of experience it on their own. So any type of job, especially the high school years if they can, is just valuable. It may only be 5 to 10 hours a week is fine, but then also when they earn their own money, it's a lot harder for them to spend that than it is when we give them that money. So any type of job is good. So my youngest right now, she works in the after-school program. So, and kids in the after-school program, you're kind of getting them at their highlight at their time where they're the wildest. So she gets money and it kind of works as birth control at the same time. So no, just kidding. But definitely just any type of job, it can help them learn some financial responsibilities. And this is the big one too, especially nowadays. A lot of people, I was doing a presentation a couple years ago to teachers, and one of them didn't even know what a check register was, had never written a check. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm old now. But balancing it, right? Whether it's on an app, whatever you're going to use, teach them how they have to balance their money. So, anytime thing that goes out, you got to subtract it so you know how much you have. Once again, most adults don't do this. Many of us live up to how much we earn and we exceed it. So that's a great time when they're in high school and earning some of their own money to make sure they do not overspend. So eventually they don't become one of those statistics that live paycheck to paycheck because they always know how much they have and they spend less than they earn. Going to college. So for some of you, if you're getting ready to send your children off to college, scary time, fun time, all at once. But it can be very expensive time too. And some of the mistakes that college kids can make, they can last 20, 30 years. So we're going to set them up with some good tips for when they do go off. So communicate. So importantly, your child has to know how much of the education are they expected to pay for, right? So some parents were not able to provide everything, so they're going to have to chip in on their own, whether they get student loans or financial aid, whatever it may be. But important to know that. In addition, do they need to get a job? Right? So once again, I have a junior at UGA. She has a side job. I don't want it to interfere with her college work. And I told her, look, if it gets to be too much, your job is college, but she does have a job that she earns a little extra money. We give her money for food and such, but any additional money, she's able to do it through her job. Will you be getting help with living expenses? Right? So you may have to, as a student, they may have to take out additional loan money to pay for those living expenses. And then also when you're going to college, consider the cost. This is so big. So in-state or out-of-state, and I'm going to show you, have an example of what we have for Ava who goes to Georgia, how much going in-state can save you, possibly. So sometimes it makes more sense to go out-of-state, but you have to weigh all the options. Distance to home, especially freshman year. A lot of times they think, oh, I'm going to be gone, I'm never going to come home again. But I noticed with my oldest, and then the next one will go off next year, she did like coming home sometimes on the weekend. So she's only in Athens, so it wasn't that tough. But if she had gone all the way, say, down to Savannah, would have been a little more difficult to come home on the weekend. So they do have to weigh that to make a decision when they go away. And then finally, is it an expensive or affordable city, right? Most college cities are somewhat, they can be affordable, but if you go to a city where it's just really expensive, well, it's going to cost you more going out and doing all types of activities, right? So I told you, this is actually Ava's for one, I guess this was for last fall. And I'm going to show you the importance of staying in state. And this is where when your children are young too, when you think when you do homework, oh, this doesn't matter. Having good grades helps so much. So right here, you can see this would have cost, I'd have to pay that for the semester, $5,000 for classes. Well, Zell Miller Scholarship covered it all. Didn't have to pay a dime for her tuition. And she's had that now, so this is the 5th time she's gotten it. So it saved me so far $30,000 in tuition, Zell Miller. So it is important to get good grades. In Zell Miller, I think it's like a 3.8 GPA. The Hope Scholarship, I think it's a 3.5. So that'll take off. But so as you're working with them when they're younger, doing that homework, I know it's hard, especially their 3rd, 4th grade. Oh, does it matter? It does. If they get good grades and they stay in the state of Georgia, you can save a lot of money in tuition. So very important. If you need financial aid, so this is, so anyone that has someone going off to college soon, in October, usually you have to fill out, or available in early October, it's called the FAFSA form. So it just, you kind of list how much money you make and calculates the amount of maximum financial aid you'll qualify for. So you're going to put on it information if the student has a job, about their financial information, and your, as a parent, your income and your assets. And then they take a look at that and they can determine, okay, this is how much money is available for you in financial aid. So like I said, usually the student in 12th grade, they will do this. The counselors at the school will help them, walk them through this, and they'll sign up for their own account. But they're going to probably ask you for some information as well, so to put on that form just to see how much financial aid they qualify for. And unfortunately, if you make too much, you may not qualify for financial aid. I mean, I guess that's kind of a good problem to have, but you just know that. And then very, very important, especially for those going off, to understand how student loans work. So like with any loan, like when we use credit cards, right, you're not just borrowing this initial amount. There's going to be interest added onto that loan. So be very careful and very smart. And I would encourage, if you do have a student that's going to use a student loan, try to pay for the education expenses only, not the eating out, not the fun times, the football games, because it adds up. That interest just compounds, just like it does when we save for retirement, except it's working in the other way. And then different loans, remember, have different terms. And then also, think about the career you're going to get into, because some student loans can be forgiven. Like for teachers, if you teach for a certain amount of years, you can have some of your student loan forgiven. And actually, if you in like a federal job, you can have, if you do it 10 years, you can have most of it in the public service loan forgiveness. But just understand the loans. If your student is going to get a student loan, just understand the terms of them and how they work, and then what they will be expected to pay once they're done. And then I'm going to show you, so if your child is going off to college, and this is something for adults as well, the true cost of debt. So it can be very, very enticing to put money on a credit card. So let's just say you decide, and we'll say, since we have mainly adults here, we'll just say you decide to have fun. You spend $5,000, you put it on a credit card, right? Maybe you upgrade your living room, whatever maybe you put an addition on here, whatever it could be. Put it all on a credit card, $5,000. We're just going to say the minimum rate payment, the interest rate is 18%, and you just pay the minimum amount, which most credit cards is 2.5%, okay? So how long do you think it would take to pay that off? $5,000 loan, you're just paying 2.5, so it's about $100 a month you're paying on it, 18% interest. Any guesses? Over 22 years. That's why debt can be so troublesome. And that's why it's really important, especially when your kids go off, explain that to them. Because you think by the time you'll pay this off, that $5,000 purchase would have cost almost $12,000, more than double what you originally charged. That's why debt is so destructive, especially for adults as well. We know that if you get into credit card debt, you're just paying it off forever. That's why banks and credit card companies have really big buildings and we have small homes, right? They know what they're doing. So you have to be mindful. So once again, if your child is going off to college, remind them. I wouldn't even let them get a credit card. I know people say, oh, we got to build up the credit score. For me, I would let them start off with a debit card. We'll worry about the credit score later once they're responsible, because trust me, credit card debt has hurt a lot more people than a credit score has helped people. So just be mindful of that. And then I kind of want to leave you with this. Read this book a number of years ago, and I thought it was a great quote, especially for people going off to college, of what truly is important. So, basically, just, choose the path that is different than other people, and that will be the most successful one. So a lot of times we think if we follow this straight and narrow, it's going to lead to success, and it may not. We have to learn how to pivot in life. I've pivoted numerous times. You never know what life is going to throw at you, so just be prepared for that, what you major in college, it may not be what you do years later. I'm an elementary ed major, and now I help teachers manage their finances. So, a long journey, but you want to start, and it's okay once you have that college degree, but just know you may have to pivot as life goes on. So, kind of threw a number of tips at you. Are there any questions? And I know personal finance can be somewhat taboo, so I'll stay after if you want to come up and ask individual questions. But any questions anyone wants to ask for the group?